Almost everyone watching this channel already knows that the 30% United States tariff on South Africa starts today. But what came as a surprise for most people was how quickly US allies will join the trade war with South Africa. When Taiwan announced their planned withholding of microchips from South Africa, this should have set off alarms in the government. You see, South Africa has the biggest and most developed tech sector on the African continent. In the Financial Times 2025 ranking of Africa's fastest growing companies, South Africa and Nigeria led the pack, together contributing over half of the 130 featured films, which nearly 50 are technological companies. On the other hand, over 60% of all semiconductors worldwide are produced in Taiwan. However, when looking at the world's most advanced chips, including those that are cutting edge, made for AI and high-performance logic, Taiwan produces 95% of that segment, the cutting edge chips. The tech sector was one of the only few sectors in South Africa where there was at least some optimism and growth. The ANC's choice to pick a battle with Taiwan of all places could have even more serious consequences than their fight with America. In this video, I will explain to you why. We are currently the only media talking about this very important development, so be sure to send this to your friends. Good morning, dear friends, Willem Petzer speaking. For more analysis like this, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and join our WhatsApp for free updates. The Willem Petzer group brings you free updates on the work we are doing straight to your WhatsApp. To sign up, just send your name and surname to the number on your screen right now. Last month, South Africa's Department of International Relations and Cooperation, under Naledi Pandor, this is Dirko, unilaterally renamed Taiwan's Taipei liaison office in Pretoria as the Taipei Commercial Office in Johannesburg and its Cape Town counterpart likewise, categorizing them under international organizations rather than foreign missions and signaling that South Africa does not recognize Taiwan as a country. Pretoria justified this change by citing its adherence to Beijing's One China policy and claimed the move reflected the non-political, non-diplomatic nature of its relationship with Taiwan. This was seen as an affront in Taiwan, coming days after South Africa's deputy president visited Beijing. Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs protested the renaming as a breach of the 1997 bilateral agreement, condemning it as unreasonable and unacceptable, and signaling that South Africa bowed to Chinese pressure. Taiwan also pledged to pursue negotiations based on parity and dignity and warned of possible countermeasures, including restrictions on semiconductor exports. However, the ANC-led government arrogantly refused to negotiate with Taiwan. In response, yesterday Taipei signaled it may restrict semiconductor exports to South Africa in retaliation for what it calls a crude downgrading of Taiwan's diplomatic presence in Pretoria. South Africa's semiconductor imports are predominantly sourced from China and South Korea, which together account for about 68% of the total shipments. However, these are only the low-end chips, and South Korea is an ally of the United States and Taiwan, and may very well also join the trade war with South Africa. Furthermore, while Taiwan's share of South Africa's semiconductor imports is negligible, and around 5%, the specific type of chips imported from Taiwan are precisely the type South African tech companies need in order to innovate and stay globally competitive, the cutting-edge ones. This gesture aligns Taiwan firmly with the US-led pressure campaign. It telegraphs that even a small player like Taiwan is willing to inflict pain to protest South Africa's alignment with China. In effect, Pretoria's tilt towards Beijing and Moscow has isolated it. Not only is it at odds with Washington, but it's also alienating partners like Taiwan who see South Africa as siding with their enemies. South Africa now faces the prospect of a wider trade war beyond the US. If a critical supplier of technology like Taiwan is ready to act, who will follow? It is not far-fetched that other US allies or major economies could reconsider trade privileges or investment in South Africa under the current climate. Markets understand that these frictions, US tariffs, diplomatic rows with Taiwan, signal a tougher environment for South Africa. By aligning with pariah states, the ANC has, intentionally or not, invited a degree of economic ostracism. Taiwan's stance is a warning. Even nations that South Africa considers marginal or purely economic partners can and will join the queue to squeeze those who break ranks with the US and its human rights-centric ideology, for which the ANC feels nothing. This is why the media is important, to build a strong resistance to these damaging policies from the government. Unfortunately, the mainstream media acts more like a PR company for the ANC than it acts like the free press. But here at the Willem Petzer Group, however, we try to fill that void. Consider helping us. Here's how. Many of you ask how you can help. We know life is busy and tough. Not everyone can volunteer or travel across the country like we do. That's why we've dedicated our lives to this cause, to fight for the future of our people, our children, and our culture. But we can't do it alone. You can help by becoming a member with just a small monthly contribution. It's quick and easy. Send the word "sign me up" to our WhatsApp number and we'll call you to explain the process and further benefits. If each supporter takes this small step, we can keep this fight alive and protect what truly matters. Beyond economics, geopolitics lurk in the background as well. South Africa's recent international alignments may have eroded goodwill in Washington. US lawmakers have openly questioned South Africa's reliability as a partner, citing its coziness with American adversaries. Republican Senator Jim Risch, for example, protested last year that South Africa was still enjoying AGOA trade benefits despite continued actions that subvert US national security and foreign policy interests. Faced with a looming tariff disaster, did the ANC government take action to prevent it? Yes, but their arrogance was their downfall. As soon as Trump's reciprocal tariff barrage was announced in April, Pretoria went into damage control mode. President Cyril Ramaphosa dispatched trade delegations and even flew to Washington on April 21 to meet Trump in the Oval Office. At this meeting, however, Ramaphosa accused Trump of spreading disinformation and giggled like a toddler when videos were played of Julius Malema and former President Jacob Zuma inciting murders of white civilians. By late April, South African officials were in negotiations, arguing that the 30% figure was based on faulty mathematics. Again, the ANC's arrogance was astounding and didn't win South Africa any favors. Then in May, Ramaphosa made another huge mistake, sending possibly the most undiplomatic and arrogant stooge he could find, Mcebisi Jonas, as a trade envoy to the US. In 2020, Jonas publicly referred to former US President Donald Trump, as he was then, as a racist, homophobic narcissist. And in his role as chairman of the MTN Group, he has faced scrutiny and legal issues in the US tied to corruption and alleged dealings with sanctioned Iranian entities. He was the worst possible choice to negotiate on South Africa's behalf, and understandably, the United States denied Jonas a diplomatic visa and refused him entry into the United States, or refused to accept his credentials as South Africa's special envoy to Washington, D.C. Ramaphosa's mere choice of South Africa's official interlocutor with the US was seen as an insult to America in Washington. In contrast with South Africa, Japan, the EU, the UK and others who were hit with these tariffs negotiated arrangements that lowered their tariff exposure to the 15 to 20% range. But South Africa enters the August 1 deadline today with no exemption or reduction in hand. Despite Ramaphosa's meeting and a flurry of talks, Trump held firm on the deadline and is imposing the full 30% rate on South Africa since no final agreement was inked. The ANC leadership, however, publicly downplayed the events leading to this, insisting that ties with the US were solid and that trade would continue as usual. In hindsight, that complacency was costly to the ANC. When Trump's tariff salvo arrived, South Africa was left scrambling, while other African nations like Zimbabwe immediately offered unilateral concessions, even vowing to eliminate tariffs on the US imports. To appease Washington, South Africa banked on argumentation and diplomacy. It maintained that it wasn't anti-American, even issuing a statement in July 7, affirming BRICS was nothing more than a push for multilateralism, not a hostile bloc. This did not pay off, however, as the ANC's diplomacy was not very diplomatic. In human terms, ordinary South Africans will feel the impact in communities tied to exports industries. Consider farm workers in citrus-growing regions, factory workers in the Eastern Cape assembling cars, dock workers at Durban Port handling shipments. Many could see reduced hours or even job losses. The ripple effect means less spending in local economies, strain on support services, and potentially more people needing government assistance at a time when the state's finances are already stretched thin. All of this because of a foreign policy and trade stumble at the highest levels. As the clock runs out before these tariffs bite, it is a moment of reckoning for South Africa's leadership. The ANC government finds itself on the eve of an economic self-inflicted disaster. Yes, the immediate cause is that the US administration's aggressive trade agenda, but the backdrop is months, or most probably even years of warning signs that went unheeded. A critical trading partner's patience wore thin, and the ANC's mix of defiance and belated diplomacy did not avert the blow. South Africa is now left to pick up the pieces, scrambling to diversify export markets, urging its companies to build so-called resilience and find new supply chains. The ANC's actions and inaction helped land South Africa in this predicament. The United States has delivered a wake-up call. It is now up to South Africa's leaders to show that they can wake up. It is very simple. Stop inciting genocide. Stop human rights abuses through racial laws, and stop supporting every foreign terrorist you can find. That's all the ANC needed to do. But they were only prevented by their arrogance and hatred. Remember to become a member of the Willem Petzer group. Goodbye and God bless.